I kind of feel like I'm going through Rush or something. This is kind of what it's like. I know.
This is going to be fun.
It's very stressful.
Hey, it's Nate Disarro, and welcome to Titans of Industry, the podcast where I talk to industry leaders and innovators who are at the top of their game and leading the pack in their fields, uncovering some of the best stories in today's business landscape. In today's episode, I sit down with Lauren Waldrip, the Executive Director of the Arkansas Rice Federation and partner at Campbell Ward. She represents an industry worth $6 billion a year to the state. And she talks about why people should be more concerned about the rice industry, how she's getting young people and the community involved to help her tell the Arkansas rice story, and why cauliflower rice isn't actually a thing. And now let's get to the episode. But before we do, it's important to know that whether you're a small business owner or the face of a multi-billion-dollar industry, your organization has a great story to tell, and Content Titan wants to help you tell it. We are a digital content creation powerhouse built for the 21st century, providing all-in creative, strategic, production, post-production, and distribution services for a 360-degree, 24/7 world. In our world, Titans are passionate, creative doers. They have the experience to take your project from start to finish, minimizing your involvement so you can focus on what matters most, running your business. So if you're ready to take your content strategy and production to the next level, our Titans are ready to help. Now here's my conversation with Lauren Waldrip.
All right. Well, Lauren, thanks so much for being here. Can't wait to have this conversation with you. So let's just jump right in. Give me a little bit of background of where did you come from? How did you end up with a title of Arkansas Rice Executive Director? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I answered lots of things, but that's one of them. So I grew up on a farm in a small rural community in East Arkansas, about halfway between Little Rock and Memphis. Didn't really appreciate that until I got to college. And, you say that you grew up on a farm and people say, oh, with cows and chickens. And you say, no, we actually grow more rice than anyone else here. And, we're ranked for other row crops as well. And so, in college, I kind of realized that there's more to this than I thought growing up. And then I did an internship while I was getting my MBA with the Farm Bureau and realized that there's just not enough folks that are telling our story. Agriculture is the state's largest industry, and I knew that there was a lot of work to be done in communicating that. And that's kind of how I got here in a more or less roundabout way.
So did you start school in business, or did you go for agriculture? What was your school experience like?
Yeah, so actually everyone else in my family went to the Ag College in Fayetteville, and I was in the Walton College. A little bit of the black sheep, probably in more ways than one, but that was one of them. And knew that I had experience in agriculture and kind of knew some of the things that went into that, but knew that a business degree could help me, one day run my own business and different things like that. And so I think it's actually worked out. I started studying accounting at first just because I knew I could get a job and that was more realistic than marketing. And then I realized I'm never going to be an accountant. And so I just went with marketing and then got my MBA.
Very cool. So speaking of the black sheep, talk about the family for a minute. So you have a twin sister.
I do. Mm-hmm.
Who is an attorney.
That's right.
And then you have an older sister. And what does she do?
She's also an attorney.
She's also an attorney. Yeah. So, more ways than one, you're the black sheep.
Yes. Well, and people, and bless his heart, I have a brother too, but he doesn't get much FaceTime. He's in the middle. So Katie and I are the youngest of four, and Allison is she's 5 years older than us, and she's an assistant U.S. attorney, so she's a federal prosecutor. Katie works for Mitchell Williams, but they're both attorneys nonetheless. So folks will ask me, well, why didn't you go to law school? And I jokingly like to say, well, because I have a soul. But no, they both, thankfully, luckily for me, provide pro bono counsel very frequently, which I certainly appreciate. And then my brother is also here in Little Rock, so he works at Armor Bank. So we're all here.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. So a day in the life, what does a day look like in your shoes?
So Becky Campbell and I have a public affairs and public relations firm. We do the short answer is it's different every day, which is good, and it works out well for us. But a lot of our clients are agriculturally related, and so through that we do all the management for the Arkansas Rice Federation, and so that could entail anything from their media relations, communications. We handle all their press and different things. We also do their promotional efforts, any of their political action committee fundraising on a state and federal level, all the filing that goes along with that. Their policy, also on a state and federal level. We work very closely with the USA Rice Federation. And so I'm sure that there are lots of activities that we do for them that I'm leaving out. But I think in a nutshell, that's what we do for them. And so we really like the capacity that gives us to work hand in hand with farmers. We communicate with them on a daily basis, whether it's meetings with our membership or just talking to them on the phone, asking them how harvest is going. In fact, last week we went to one of our farmers' operations and just kind of rode around with him, and we just try to kind of keep a grip on how things are going and what their challenges are and how we can help move the needle for them, or what programs need to be improved, or how can we increase communication and just tell their story and really try to create a face. Folks are increasingly concerned about not only where their food comes from, but who grows it and how they grow it. And so that's a story that is very appealing, I think. I realize I'm a little bit biased, but, I think not only is it trendy, but it's sustainable in so many ways. And we have a really great story to tell in that regard. And so, I hate to say my job's easy, but I have a lot to work with and some really great folks in our membership. Our farmers that are involved in our organizations, the Arkansas Rice Federation, which is the umbrella organization, and it represents the farmers that do policy, the council that does promotional efforts, and then the merchants and the millers. But those folks volunteer their time, and so they're giving up time on their operations, time with their families. We're taking a group of catfish farmers to D.C. next week to meet with their legislators, and they are affecting decisions and having conversations that affect policy that's helpful for all catfish farmers. And those folks are, again, sacrificing to do that, and I don't think that they get near enough praise or recognition, all that they do to do that. And so it's neat, and it's very rewarding for me to be able to see that on a firsthand level.
That's awesome. So backing up a little bit again, when you were going through school, you realized there's great stories to tell. You kind of saw the direction you needed to go in order to maybe most beneficially tell those stories. But did you kind of come out of school knowing, all right, this is the direction I want to go? Or did the rice thing fall in your lap? Like, did this just kind of happen?
Sure. So I was getting ready to start my last semester of MBA, and had a mutual friend who had actually worked in Senator Bozeman's office when I was there. And I think it was just kind of a God thing that the timing worked out where I could switch. I could come down to Little Rock for the legislative session to work ultimately at the firm where he worked that represented rice. And I could switch from the full-time MBA program at the Walton College to the executive MBA program, which allows you to obviously do your MBA remotely. So I came down here in time for the legislative session, and just became more and more engaged on that front before Becky and I eventually bought out that firm. So again, I never decided I want to represent. I knew what I felt like I was good at because of my experiences and the things that I cared about, specifically agriculture, but I didn't even know that people got paid to do this. A lot of folks in the Walton College go, they stay in Northwest Arkansas, and they'll go to, all that is P&G, Walmart,
trucking,
yes, which are really great things, and they've done really great things for the state, but I knew that was never what I wanted to do. And I think the Lord just kind of worked it out for me, and I said, okay, and now here we are.
Well, I think it's important to talk about the fact that passion is something that really kind of can easily open those doors.
That's
because
right.
If you already know kind of what you want to do, how you want to do it, but you don't know how you're going to get there, if you just follow your passion, it's going to all come together.
That's right. And I hate to use the word passion because I feel like it's kind of sometimes overused. People say, I'm passionate about reading, and I'm passionate about, I think sometimes I'm passionate about sleeping, but certainly agriculture. I mean, I could just talk for hours about, what's helpful for our farmers and how can we open up new trade markets and how can we, at the end of the day, move the needle for them. Let's get them broadband so they can be more efficient in their operations and help feed people in a more efficient and effective way. I love having these conversations. And so I guess that does qualify me as passionate as I roll my eyes. But it's very special. And before I got my MBA, I was working for the Razorback Foundation, obviously in Fayetteville. And I'm passionate about the Razorbacks. That's what our family does. And that's kind of, some families go to the beach or do different things. Well, we do the Razorbacks. And I thought maybe for a little bit I wanted to work in athletics, but, eventually realized that agriculture is a little bit higher on my list. Go Hogs. I think it's a very special thing.
You can give me the stats, but rice, Arkansas is the largest producer of rice in the country.
That's right.
And Arkansas is a largely agricultural state in general.
That's
so
right.
Where does rice fit within the state of Arkansas, within the grander scheme of the country?
Sure. It sounds like you've already got the talking points. Maybe I should just let you keep going. Yes, I'll give you the little elevator pitch for rice, and then we'll go from there. So Arkansas is the largest rice producing state. Every year we grow rice, approximately half of the nation's rice, on around 1.1 million acres. It contributes $6 billion to the state's economy every year. There's a stat that says that every rice farmer generates $1 million within their local communities. And, as you know, our agriculture is the state's largest industry. Rice is not the most valuable in that ranking, I guess, but it's certainly substantial. And I will say that even though we represent rice, there's virtually no such thing as just a rice farmer. We've got a couple, but they're white whales. So everyone who farms rice also farms soybeans. And then, of course, as you know, there's the poultry industry that's up there as well, and lots of other commodities that are ranked in the top, 25, I believe. So the state as a whole, the agricultural climate, I believe, is $21 billion to the state's economy. And so, again, I just don't feel like this is a conversation that, you hear all the time about manufacturing or, all the great things that are going on in Northwest Arkansas. But I think at the end of the day, agriculture is the backbone of our state. And I'm glad that I kind of get to tell that story. And that's certainly, people like to be number one and stuff, and agriculture is number one. So here we are.
Well, and it's interesting, too, how it crosses over so many other industries because trucking is another large industry in the state of Arkansas and globally. I mean, most people don't think of the trucking industry globally as this big industry, but it's huge. And Arkansas, I don't remember what the number of, I think there's over 300 trucking companies that are members of the Arkansas Trucking Association. So you look at it from a big statewide standpoint, and trucking affects rice farming and the way that the rice moves and everything else. So I love to talk about the cross section of industry. So what else is there kind of a cross section when you look at what all the rice industry affects?
So trucking for sure. In fact, we've been having conversations with the Arkansas Department of Transportation recently because of harvest or during harvest. Obviously, there's lots of logistics that go into that and certain permits that our folks have to apply for to ensure that they are compliant with state regulations and federal regulations, too, when it comes to interstate highways. So, that for sure. A lot of folks don't know that there's byproducts to rice. So rice starts in its raw form. It is then, when it goes to the milling process first, the husk comes off. And that leaves a layer of bran, and that's your brown rice. So a lot of people don't know that brown rice and white rice are the same thing. So once you polish the bran off, then it becomes white rice. But I say that to say that those byproducts contribute to other industries like bedding for chicken houses, or sometimes the husks are even part of the conversation for energy sources. So there's certainly other aspects that the industry tries to explore so that they can use the entire product.
Very cool. So speaking of rice products, one of my favorites is cauliflower rice, right?
That's not a real thing, Nate.
So, well, let's dive into this for a minute. I think it's anybody that knows you knows that you're very passionate about this. Back to passion.
Yes. I really am passionate about this, though.
Yeah. So tell me about cauliflower rice.
Sure. So, well, there's no such thing as cauliflower rice.
What?
Because, yeah, I know, shocker, I know, but and actually legally in Arkansas, because this past legislative session we just passed a law that defined the word rice. It gave a standard of identity to that four-letter word. A standard of identity really just sets out a definition so that there's no dispute or debate over what that actually means. And so you'll see this done. This is a very common thing, but typically it's done at the federal level. A lot of the intent of this legislation was to encourage the FDA to do their job in developing that standard of identity. You've likely seen these conversations happening recently at the federal level with milk and also meat products. And so we passed that legislation at the state level. I believe they are promulgating those rules right now. But the background is that a ricer is a kitchen tool. And so we're seeing these companies that are actually ricing cauliflower, but they're calling it cauliflower rice. Just because you put it through a ricer does not make it rice. As you and I know, Nate, rice is a grain and it comes out of the ground. It's not a shape. But on a serious note, I would just say that rice as a grain obviously has a different nutritional profile than something like cauliflower. And so as a consumer, if you purchase something on the shelf that says rice, well, you expect that the nutritional profile of that is what you're, let's say, feeding your family. It's not a vegetable, and it should not be thought of as such. Same goes for a vegetable. So let's say you buy quote-unquote cauliflower rice, which is now illegal in Arkansas. But let's say you purchase that and feed it to your child thinking that it's a carb because it says rice. But your child developed hypoglycemia because they didn't get the nutrition that they needed because you thought you were giving them a carb and you actually gave them a vegetable, and now here we are. But really, at the end of the day, this is about consumers and them knowing what they're purchasing and what they're feeding their families. We welcome those products. We just want consumers to know what they're purchasing. And these companies have made it very clear that their intent is to brand it as actual rice. In fact, there's one company, Right Rice, their CEO was quoted as saying, in fact, many consumers don't even know it's not rice. And that's obviously a problem. And so, the AG's office has defended the law as saying it's inherently misleading labeling, which is, it's just...
Not cool.
Yeah, no, it's not. Frankly, it's not. And so that was a project that we worked on last year to try to set the record straight so that everyone knows that rice is a grain. It's not a shape.
So it became law in Arkansas, but this went much bigger than that, right? It was a conversation well outside of Arkansas.
That's right. Yeah. So we got some interesting media coverage out of that. And I think we've seen some of these companies revising their labels because they are able to use, at least in Arkansas, they can say riced. I mean, that's a verb. That's not really that subjective, but rice as a noun is not. But I would also say Louisiana passed some similar legislation. And again, this is hopefully in theory just to kind of equip FDA to, set the record straight on a federal national standpoint.
It seems to be working.
Yeah, we're still pushing FDA. Yeah.
I'm sure it's an uphill battle that will, take a long time to really get there.
It's a process. That's right. But every chance we get to touch base with them about it, we're pushing for it. And we're also having some congressional conversations on the national level as well.
Super cool. So I would kind of consider that among the in the category of kind of innovations in the industry, right? So you're doing things that are sort of unconventional, helping kind of push legislation and changing the way people view rice as a grain versus a vegetable. What else is happening in the industry that you would look at and say, there's some really cool things happening, really innovative things?
Sure. Well, when we come to work, I would say a lot of what we try to do is handle things that our farmers don't have time to handle themselves, that can essentially add value to not only what they do every day, but the product that they grow to feed us and our families and our neighbors and the world. Rice plays a significant role in food aid, again, in countries all around the world. Again, a lot of that is storytelling, and so I'm just trying to think. I would say one new kind of outside of the box thing that we did this year that was wildly successful was starting a program called Rice Reps. And so a couple years ago, we started a rice license plate through the state, and that gave us the resources and the funding to start a scholarship program. And so this past spring, we opened up the application period, I guess, and it's for, at that point, it was folks who were juniors who would complete the program over that summer, and then their senior years when it would end. And I had no idea what kind of interest we would have. We had done some other scholarship programs before, but there wasn't very much participation. And I wanted to make sure that we're, good stewards of these resources, and we implement programs in ways that will actually help move the needle in measurable ways. And so we opened the application period, and we had over 200 kids apply from all over the state, some from ag backgrounds, some not from ag backgrounds. And so that was really, I guess, humbling just to know that these kids are interested in learning more about the industry, whether they're from an ag background or not. And so we wound up accepting around 50 kids, and I didn't want there to be a lot of mandatory things. I wanted it to be very autonomous, and whatever they were interested in to take advantage of, that we could equip them with the tools that they needed to tell our story and to learn more about the industry in that process, and a potential career in agriculture later. I just wanted to provide all those things. And so we had different field days. We did a cooking class for them with the Division of Agriculture. We took them to one of our farmers' operations during, I guess he was irrigating at that point. And so it was really interesting to see kind of the wheels turning as they saw these things and were learning and posting about them and telling their friends about, the industry and what that means. And then in September, we gave out the final scholarships and wound up giving out over $15,000 to these students, some of, many of which will go study agriculture in their in higher education. And, again, I was just really pleasantly surprised at at the feedback that we got, and also just the folks that we have been able to reach, and again, tell that story through kids that are interested in it.
So half this conversation has been about storytelling, which of course I love because that's what I do. But so when you think about these high school kids being able to go out and tell stories, did they just naturally get it? Was there a lot of disconnect, or did you feel like it was like a really kind of organic process that they just figured it out?
That's funny that you said organic, because I was about to say that. But I wanted it to be, you can be as creative as you want in the activities that you choose to do or not to do. And, we're here to support that and to answer any questions that you might have. They did a really good job, and I was really impressed with them. Some of them took the initiative to set up their own farm tours with some of these farmers. And some of my members were calling saying, is this a thing? Like, am I supposed to, I've had students reaching out to me, and that was not facilitated by us, and maybe encouraged, but, it was very rewarding to be able to kind of create, I guess, a platform for those conversations to happen. A lot of these kids went to, girls stayed together, boys stayed together, and have developed relationships that they will continue. And I hope that they can not just benefit from the new friendships, but also kind of collaborate with other peers that share similar interests in promoting the state's largest industry.
I want to dive a little further into this because I think it's interesting I talk a lot about replicating and multiplying messages, right? The whole point of video and audio and everything is you want to multiply your message. You, Lauren, don't want to have to go say the same thing
Right.
over and over and over. So I think a lot of industries, a lot of brands can sort of take this approach and use, high school kids, people that are interested and passionate about an industry or product or whatever it is, and turn them into ambassadors that can go and sort of spread the word, tell the message through their own eyes.
True.
But did you ever feel like you were losing control of the brand or the story or anything like that? I'm curious, just from a control standpoint, because a lot of brands, they're very particular.
Sure.
Strict brand guidelines,
Yes.
things like that. And then a lot of industries don't want the wrong message to get out. So
Yeah.
was that ever a fear that
Yeah.
you kind of lived
Yeah.
in?
Absolutely. So, and I can understand that because we've done other projects where we've maybe worked with bloggers or something, and these are the talking points, and this is the logo, and this is, like you're saying, the brand. But I didn't want to give these kids too much structure. I didn't want them to have to go by a checklist. I wanted to, again, provide these experiences and resources for them, and then I wanted them to curate that however they saw fit, because that organic I hate to keep saying storytelling. I feel like it's
think
cliche,
it's the best
but
word ever.
yes,
So
yes.
please use it as much as you want.
Painting that picture organically, I felt like was a lot more valuable than me giving them some sort of canned pitch. This is what, maybe one rice rep took from the farm tour, and she thought it was interesting that, our farmer has saved this much water in this much time. But maybe this rice rep took away something completely different about, feeding the world or, other great things that farmers do. So I really didn't want to provide that structure that sometimes people are very particular. Sometimes I am very particular about.
Yeah, well, I think perspective is good, right? And
Yeah.
to your point, this allows you to get different perspectives from different people. But I think it's such a fascinating and interesting concept to take high school students and let them go tell the story from their own eyes. And if you don't lose too much control and it doesn't become fake news, so
Right.
to speak,
Yes.
then you're okay.
Yes, yes.
Was the public's perception I think a lot of times we want to think people won't get it, but I also think people are smarter than we think they
Yes,
are.
yeah,
And so
sure.
did the public get it? Like these are kids still.
Yeah, well, we had some feedback from our students saying that they would have their followers reach out and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were into rice," but that would just create, again, an organic conversation in which the student was able to say, "Well, I wasn't really, but." If you think about it, honestly, we all should be, because when agriculture is successful, when our farmers are successful, our whole state is successful. And that's, something that not everyone realizes until you kind of put two and two together.
Yeah. Okay, I want to shift gears just a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about on kind of a national level, Arkansas being the largest producer of rice in the country. California, I think, is number 2. Is that right?
That sounds right, yeah. I believe that's right, yeah.
But I guess going back to where you and I first met was at Five Oaks Lodge.
Oh, yes, yes.
In outside
Yeah,
Stuttgart.
with USA Rice.
USA Rice. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is you've got a federal organization, and then every state has their own. But we met through, it was Sarah's Weeknight Meals, a TV show that was sponsored by USA Rice, and we went and made like rice balls, like fried rice balls,
Yes.
which was a farmer recipe. So there's a lot of interesting connections and ways that the rice industry as a whole, starting at the federal level, is kind of pushing the use of rice, promoting it in different ways. So how do you interact with other organizations outside of Arkansas?
So we have a very close working relationship with our friends at USA Rice. In fact, they've got 2 staffers who work here in this Little Rock office, and it's very beneficial for us to all be able to communicate on a daily basis and be on the same page. Josh Hankins and Emily Woodall are here. They are more focused on conservation efforts, but farmers were the first conservationists. They depend on natural resources to continue producing a safe and quality food supply. And so that's something that's very important and top of mind for them. And so, the role that Josh and Emily play here is very important and crucial to what they do every day. On a national level, our USA Rice office is based in Arlington, Virginia, so just outside of DC, and they have a staff of just over about 20 folks who add a lot of value to what our farmers do. And from the communications point, specifically, again, we work in tandem with their team because we are the number one rice producing state, and really try to make sure that we're all on the same page, that, the right hand talks to the left hand so we can all complement each other and not recreate the wheel. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is why are we recreating what someone already did this? We don't know. And they've got some really talented folks up there that that work to, again, push our message. Unfortunately, in the U.S., we're seeing an increase in imported rice into the U.S., and I think a lot of that is because of consumer preferences for some of these aromatics, jasmines, basmatis, things like that. But we're actually growing those here, which is good. But just telling that story, look for the USA Rice label, support local farmers. This is how you can do that, and this is what that means to our economy, and how beneficial it is when you support those farmers. So we do lots of neat things with them. Last year they brought the Think Rice truck to Arkansas, and they went on a road trip all across the U.S., and they, in fact, just started doing that again this year in the Northeast. But, giving out rice cookers and encouraging rice consumption. And, a lot of the feedback that we all got from that was, I didn't know we grew rice here, which is crazy. I'm like, you had to drive, especially in Little Rock, you had to drive past a rice field to get here. So let's have this conversation. So that's just one example of some of the neat projects. We've also we just completed Rice Month recently, which is in September, but USA Rice partnered with some local restaurants to do a influencer food tour. We also, Arkansas Rice, partnered with local restaurants to do some neat September promotional campaigns. And so we also work with them very closely on a policy level. Obviously, they do lots of work that is very influential to things that affect our farmers every day. So that's all. That's all.
It.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing major.
There's probably a lot of things I left out of it.
Well, speaking of things like that, so right here we've got Second Rodeo Beer.
Yes.
So tell me the story behind this and kind of how this came to be and the significance of it.
Sure. Anheuser-Busch, you may know, is the largest domestic consumer of Arkansas-grown rice. Not all, obviously, beer manufacturers use rice, but Anheuser-Busch certainly does, and I feel like you can taste it when you drink their beer. However, rice has recently been seen, I would say, kind of as a stepchild in craft beer. And we have really been having, for a couple years now, we've been having more and more conversations with some of our local breweries about incorporating rice into their beers because of the crispness that it can add to the beer. The first one that we did was with Stone's Throw. And then now we have a canned beer that's with Lost 40, and it's called Second Rodeo. And again, it uses Arkansas grown rice, and they were very concerned about telling that story and really capturing, this is the face of the farmer, and this is the farm where this rice was grown. And so we got to do some really fun things with them as far as capturing that and developing that and telling that story. And we're still continuing to do that. In fact, I think this will be in Walmart's soon now, which is news. I'm very
nationally or kind of on a regional level. Do you know?
I believe that Lost 40 is only distributed on the state level.
Okay.
But Walmart's and Kroger's in Arkansas will have it.
Very cool.
And so that was just a fun project. We're also working with Rocktown right now to distill a rice bourbon. And that's been a very long process. I don't know if you know anything about distilling bourbon. I certainly do not. But we're working with Phil Brandon over there and his team, and we're really excited about that. I think it'll come out in a couple months.
Phil is a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Arkansas, one of the very first videos I ever made was of Rocktown Distillery.
Really? It's a neat story.
It's a really cool story, and the thing that blew me away more than anything is Phil's walking around tasting these bourbons at like 9 a.m. This
It's
guy's
just
a
business.
machine. Yeah,
Yes.
just product, quality assurance.
Yes.
Are there any specific concerns regarding the state of the industry that, are on your radar that people need to kind of be considerate of?
One is the fact that consumers don't really understand the risk that farmers absorb to put a crop in the ground. These folks risk millions of dollars during planting season every year, and they do it knowing that prices are volatile, markets are risky, who knows what the trade climate's going to look like tomorrow. And don't even talk about weather and flooding. So even with all of that uncertainty, they accept it just to put a crop in the ground. And in any other industry, your return is going to be proportionate to your risk. But with farming, that's not the case. And I don't think that farmers get enough credit for accepting that risk when, often they don't. They're going out of business every day. That's no secret. And so, I certainly think it's something worth recognizing and something worth talking about and appreciating. And just for agriculture in general, I think that used to things were very seasonal, and farmers kind of had a mindset of this will blow over, the prices will be better next year or things like that. And margins are so low right now that we can't operate that way. Farmers obviously know that, but I think we cannot use the excuse of because that's the way we've always done it. And ironically, I guess it's almost kind of encouraging to me sometimes when I, unfortunately hear maybe a farmer say that, well, we've never done that before. And yeah, well, we don't really have a choice. We've got to, whether it's adopting new technologies that help us, save water that we use to irrigate, or gauge soil moisture levels to irrigate more efficiently, or, measuring things that we want to track, and we've got some really progressive folks, and some of those technologies, again, are being successfully adopted and deployed. But I think we just have to continue pushing for increased efficiencies and, again, these new technologies, because, legacies and I guess tradition really of a lot of these operations depends on them continuing to be more effective and efficient.
There's a conference I go to every year in Los Angeles called Worlds, and the founder and CEO of the conference, his name's Roman Sunder. Roman gets on stage and kicks things off, and he says, we're here to do the NBDB, which is the never been done before. Uh-huh. And he's talking about the idea of bringing cultural icons and world-class marketers and CEOs together to kind of come up with what can we do that's never been done before, that's going to help shift a culture, shift a industry, shift brands into new ways of doing things, because we can't always just do it the way it's been done. Right. We need to seek out what's never been done before. And it sounds like that's the exact same thing going on in this industry as well.
Right. And change is, obviously uncomfortable a lot of times, but sometimes you just have to accept it and embrace it and just try to figure out how to navigate it and trust that you will figure it out in a better way. I would say, the Rice Reps program was a perfect example of that. We went from having, a program with no participation, no amplification, that did not utilize social media at all. And I just said, look, this is where we are today. These conversations are happening whether we're a part of them or not, and they're happening on the internet, and we've got to get there. I think if you put some thought into it and some strategy into it, and think about what actually makes the most sense, you just kind of jump sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And that's one of the reasons, we were talking, I think, off camera about the idea that, you don't strike me as the stereotypical person that I would see as the executive director of agricultural industry. But it's because of the things you're doing and all these amazing things. I'm not going to ask your age, but
Thank you.
You're significantly younger and less gray-headed than the person I would maybe stereotypically put in the chair. But I think it's showing that these are the kinds of things it takes. This is the thinking. This is the way to move an industry forward and make sure that we're still relevant in years to come.
That's right. Well, I think I appreciate that. But, and I've always thought, Nate, that more often than not, you just have to be willing to work harder than other people. And I feel like I certainly am. But yeah, I think that it's just something that I genuinely care about. And do I work with lots of men who have daughters my age? Absolutely. But I feel like I can hold my own, and I feel like I've earned their trust. And I have, enough street credit, to be able to operate effectively. And, it's been, I think from a professional standpoint, my business partner is also a woman, and, we've had some, learning opportunities. But I mean, we do a good job. And, I'm proud of the work we do. I'm proud of the progress we make. I'm also proud of the clients that we represent. Becky and I started Campbell Ward. It was something that the Lord kind of worked out, and it happened very quickly. And, it was another thing where we jumped and had to trust the fact that we were going to work hard enough to make it work. And we did.
That's awesome. And I think shifting gears to the business side for a minute, I think a lot of people want to have their own businesses, want to jump off and kind of jump into things. But talk about the importance of Becky, your business partner, and sort of the complementary nature of y'all's relationships.
Well, she's the most important. So let me just be clear. She makes sure that we do all the important things. I kind of am just the big picture dreamer. She tells me, like, that's Lauren, that's not the budget, or, you're supposed to be here at the, I mean, she is the brains behind the operation for sure. And, I don't know, I'm fortunate to certainly have her as a best friend, but I don't know how I looked into convincing her to go in on something 50-50 with me. We are 50-50, but I tell people that she's my boss because, well, she is. In fact, she had a baby about 7 months ago now, and, we had prepared for maternity leave. We had coordinated with our staff and knew kind of what that was going to look like, and it was fine. We didn't go to jail, we did get a letter from the IRS at one point, and I was like, oh no, this is it, but it was a credit. Anyway,
she should go leave more often. Right?
Yes, so I was prepared for all of that, but I was not prepared for my best friend to be tied up for 8 weeks or whatever. I mean, I would be at a business luncheon, and I would text her and say, ask her a question about who is that one person or I need to touch base with this. And she would not reply for something like 30 minutes. And I am just thinking, what is she? It's like she's raising a child or something. Why can she not text me back? So, but she's really amazing. And I feel like we complement each other very well. She's very type A, very organized, and I kind of shoot from the hip. And somehow we meet in the middle on that. I don't know how she deals with me, but I certainly appreciate it very much.
Well, conversation we had earlier today with producer Lauren of the podcast here, she brought up the idea of another guy named Jeremy Cowart, who's a celebrity and entertainment photographer out of Nashville. He does a lot of amazing work, but he has a business partner named Michael, and Jeremy refers to Michael as the peanut butter, and Jeremy's the jelly. Yeah. So you've got a peanut butter and jelly in every good business relationship. Somebody that's sort of the structured, sticky one that makes sure you kind of have the base, and then the jelly that just kind of is all over the place and a little bit crazy, and but at the same time, that's where great ideas come from. They both are equally important to have a great sandwich. Yes. So I'll bring that one full circle.
I love, yeah. Well, I've always heard peanut butter and jelly, but the runny structure part, that makes a lot more sense now. Yeah. I get it.
So what's next on the horizon? What big things are to come, or what are you working on that's exciting and fun?
So farmers are in harvest right now. So I've been kind of dreaming about this event for a couple years. this year it has, or I hope it is going to come to fruition. So at the end of October, we will do an event that's called Downtown on the Farm. So I'll walk you through a little bit of maybe what that thought process looks like and the strategy and why we're doing that. But as I already said, agriculture is the state's largest industry. So I thought, well, there's nothing that really talks about agriculture in Arkansas, and there's nothing that brings all these commodity groups together. Again, I know I work for rice, but I am just pro agriculture in general. And so I thought, well, what if we did something that we all collaborated on and just kind of told that story, explain to consumers and folks in quote unquote urban Arkansas, i.e. Little Rock, how farmers are preserving natural resources and growing food for them, and different organic conversations like that, I guess. And so we came up with Downtown on the Farm. And, we've constantly been having to have this conversation of agriculture in areas like Little Rock. A lot of times we'll partner with the Downtown Little Rock Partnership for obvious reasons, but they do a really good job of, well, frankly, throwing parties and really getting folks to show up to events. And we are friends with those folks over there. Again, they just do an outstanding job. And so at the end of October, we'll have this event. And so we'll have live music. We're bringing in an Arkansas native who I think is in Nashville now, Adam Hambrick. He's the headliner. And then some local music acts as well. But then there will be your standard, food trucks, vendors, pumpkin patch, pumpkin painting, face painting, petting zoo. Let's see, what am I missing? So all that kind of stuff. But then also we're partnering with local restaurants so that folks can see the entire farm to table process. We are partnering with other agriculture educational entities, so like the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture, the Game and Fish Commission, different entities like that, just to have that conversation that a lot of consumers don't know about. And so I'm so close to this, I didn't really have a good gauge to know if it would be successful or not. And we haven't had the event, but when we had the press conference, we just got so much coverage about, just earned media about, what is it and what does it look like and when is it? And so that was really encouraging. But then I realized that we were kind of like the dog that caught the car, and we jumped right in. And so, but planning for that has been great, and it's going to be hopefully very successful, and something that we can continue in the future. Again, just to talk to consumers about where their food comes from.
I love it. Well, by the time this airs, the event will have happened.
Yes.
So hopefully we can do a little tag on or something at the end here and
report back.
Close the gap on what's going on. But that's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. All right, so a few quick questions to kind of close things out. Are you a reader? What's the last book you read, or what's your favorite book?
Right now, I'm reading Dispatches from Pluto. I like to read books I can kind of relate to. I'm kind of into Carol Clore right now. So he's an artist that's from Elaine, Arkansas, and went to do really great things. And unfortunately, now his paintings are really expensive. But I like him because he's from the Arkansas Delta, right? So, but Dispatches from Pluto is about a couple who moved to Pluto, Mississippi from New York. And it talks about all the things that they were initially odd to them, but then they realize it's just kind of part of the Delta and the history that's associated with it. And that's about as far as I am into the book right now.
Perfect. Love it. Are there any specific daily routines that you have to go through every single day that help your day become more productive or beneficial?
I try to read the Skim. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like a daily email. I have to work out in the mornings because if I work out I don't work out after work because, you work late and then you're tired and just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. So I like to work out in the mornings, but that only happens about 2 days a week. Quiet time's really important to me so I can, spend time talking to the Lord and try to get my head on straight and focus on things that are actually important. I talk to my twin sister just about every morning on the way to work. And that, that's just kind of a thing that we've done for a long time. So I think that's about it.
Love it. Best piece of advice you've either given or received?
I'm hesitant to tell you this, but I find myself saying it all the time. And this goes back to that not recreating the wheel. So the first thing that popped into my head was work smarter, not harder. Just because why, and I try to remind myself of that on a professional standpoint. If I spend my whole day just busy, but at the end of the day, what did you accomplish? Is that really moving the needle? Is it, being effective either for our farmers or for Becky and our firm or whatever? I try to remind myself of that. You don't need to set 100 meetings. You don't need to. I feel like young professionals or professionals in general really just are all the time bragging about being busy. I'm like, that's your problem. Let's be real. We're all busy. So, I don't even tell, how are you? Busy? Oh, well, really? We all are. So go right ahead. But, I think that there are ways to kind of mitigate a lot of those issues that are self-inflicted, because I don't think, it's not important to spend 60 hours a week at the office. There are ways that you can add value probably more effectively by not doing that.
I love it. Speaking my language. If you wrote a book or had a billboard, what would the title of the book be, or what would your message on the billboard be?
Let's see. The billboard would probably say, "Eat rice." It's so unoriginal, but the book would probably be about twin stories. I feel like I have so many stories about being a twin, funny instances, different things that I've learned, how I feel sorry for people who aren't a twin. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of content, I feel like.
Fair enough.
Hopefully she would help me write the book, though.
I was about to say, it would have to be,
co-authored. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite farmer?
I mean,
I don't want to get you in trouble here, but come on, we've all got favorites.
Well, let's be clear. I have a chairman and he's my boss. So I feel like I need to be clear. But I also have a board and they're all really great too. We have some farmers who are more involved than others. So
it's a very PC answer. We can leave it at that.
Yes.
We can move on.
What's the answer? I love all my children the same. Is that I don't have kids, so I don't know how that really works. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. And if it wasn't rice, what would you be doing with your life?
I think the cool thing about rice is that I would probably do it for free. And don't tell my farmers that, because it's good to be able to pay your bills. But I mean, I think Becky and I both are very interested and involved in different organizations that specifically feed hungry Arkansans. And even, yes, we have our firm, but we kind of do that to the side through volunteer capacities now. Becky used to do it through a professional capacity. And so my initial inclination is to say we would be, because I really like to eat, and I like for other people to be able to eat. So, that's my first thought, is that we would help feed people.
That's great.
Which is kind of what we do now, so I don't know if that really counts.
Fair enough. Last question, beer, wine, or cocktails?
Well, I think I'm really big into being appropriate. So I think if you're at a baseball game, you need to be drinking beer.
Second rodeo
or Anheuser-Busch. Yes, absolutely. I think if you're, at, a fancy dinner party, maybe wine. However, I think rules can be bent. I don't think you have to have red wine with your steak. If you want white wine, go right ahead. Same with fish. I think pretty much most rules are negotiable. That is one of them. Yeah. So
I love it.
But that is one that I think is flexible and has no wrong answer.
So what I hear you saying is you like all
I do not discriminate.
Forms equally. Okay, fair enough. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun.
This has been fun. Thank you.
If you liked this episode of Titans of Industry, head to contenttitan.co/podcast for more episodes, or subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for listening.